May 23rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with Ireland, Norway, and Spain's recognition of a Palestinian state. The three countries say they're officially recognizing a Palestinian state starting next week. Israel slammed the plan, calling the decision a reward for terrorism. Some U.S. Federal Reserve officials expect to maintain interest rates at the current levels for longer if inflation remains stubborn. Stocks slipped from record highs after the minutes were released on Wednesday. And in the coming hours, South Korea's central bank is widely expected to hold its interest rate steady once again, with high inflation being one of the main reasons for a potential 11th straight rate freeze. Three European leaders have announced plans to recognize Palestine as a state. The announcement was met with sharp criticism from the Israeli Prime Minister, who said such recognition is a prize for terrorism. Our Ising just starts us off.
Ireland, Norway, and Spain have announced they will officially recognize Palestine as a state next week. The European nations say Palestine has the right to create an independent state and expect other countries to join in. The leaders say they're taking joint action for the sake of peace in the Middle East. According to Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre, recognizing Palestine is supporting moderate forces that are on a retreating front in a protracted and cruel conflict, calling it an investment in the only solution that can bring lasting peace in the Middle East. He also called on other countries to do the same in order to ensure that the process towards a two-state solution can build momentum. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of putting the two-state solution in danger with his policy of pain and destruction in Gaza, while Irish Prime Minister Simon Harris emphasized that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. The prime ministers of all three nations announced the official recognition will take place next Tuesday. Meanwhile, in response to the European nations' decision to recognize Palestine as a state, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the decision, calling it a prize for terrorism.
The intention of several European countries to recognize a Palestinian state is a reward for terrorism. This evil cannot be given a state. This would be a terrorist state. It will try to repeat the massacre of October 7th again and again. We will not consent to this. Rewarding terrorism will not bring peace, neither will it stop us from defeating Hamas.
144 out of 193 member states of the UN recognize Palestine as a state. However, Britain and Australia have recently indicated in recent months that they will also follow suit, while EU members Malta and Slovenia have also made such indications. 이승재, Arirang News.
South Korea is set to hold its interest rate decision meeting today. Meanwhile, in the U.S., minutes from the last FOMC meeting suggested that there is a lack of confidence to push forward with interest rate reductions. Our An Sung-jin reports.
U.S. Federal Reserve officials have indicated that it may take longer than expected to see the interest rate come down. Minutes from the most recent Federal Open Market Committee, which took place from April 30th to May 1st, were released on Thursday, stating concerns over a lack of confidence in the slowing of inflation. Inflation has been more stubborn than officials forecast at the beginning of this year. The Core Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, a key indicator used in the U.S. to measure expenditure for goods and services, jumped 0.5% on month in January and 0.3% in February and March. That's above the Fed's target of a 0.2% on-month PCE increase if it's to meet its inflation goal of 2%.
The short answer seems to be the Fed is not giving up on that target. But it's an arbitrary target based in some academic, some practical research, but no factor law in that sense. And if the Fed is unable to hit 2%, I would not be surprised to see if the goalposts move a bit closer to 2.5%.
News of further prolonged inflation woes raised concerns on the market, with stocks down at the end of trading Wednesday despite a stronger than expected performance from Nvidia. Nvidia's results have been a focal point for Wall Street as it holds more than 80% of the AI chip market. During the day, the Nasdaq, S&P, and Dow Jones Industrial Average all jumped after the chipmaker posted its fiscal first quarter results. However, all three major stock indexes dipped during the final hour of trading following the release of the FOMC minutes and a likely delay in cutting rates. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Prices for fruits and vegetables have yet to be tamed here in South Korea, and consumer inflation is still far from the central bank's goal of 2%, which is why it's widely believed the Bank of Korea will yet again keep its key interest rate frozen at 3.5% in the coming hour. We're joined by Professor Song Soo-young this morning. Welcome back.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. Professor Song, are you also expecting another rate freeze? What makes you think that?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, and even the Federal Reserve in U.S., they think they are in a good position to study what's going on in the inflation and the economy. So, to that regards, our South Korean economy is actually not. I mean, worse than the U.S. situation, because our economic growth rate, even though because of the recovery of the exports, particularly in semiconductor and car exports, we have recorded a very surprise GDP growth rate. But clearly, this tells us the dichotomy persists in the South Korean economy. So what we should be concerned is how to invigorate the GDP growth rate rather than currently. I think the Central Bank of Korea has put emphasis on some concern over the exchange rate, the depreciation of Korean won against the US dollar, but that should not be the primary focus or concern. The reason is because GDP growth rate matters a lot in Korean right now situation, because the inflation rate, as I look over the data, and then a year-on-year basis, seasonally adjusted, and the growth rate for the past several months, particularly the growth rate has been declining clearly. Only some food and some necessities, living necessities, they have shown there is a bump in the February and March, but clearly it drops again. As a result, I think the primary concern of the Bank of Korea should be on some recovery of the GDP growth rate and the domestic market and the aggregate demand in the domestic economy.
So GDP growth and domestic economy are the main figures that we have to looking at. For now, if the central bank does make the widely expected move, another rate freeze, it'll be a record-long rate freeze for a year and 4 months. Professor Song, could you explain what this means?
Yeah, this means, as I told you earlier, that because the Fed they are too much concerned about when they decide to decrease the interest rate, then might fuel the inflation surge again. So as long as, and also the Fed is not sure about some neutral rate of interest rate when the economy is in full gearing up and full operation, then how much without any acceleration of inflation rate. That is a neutral rate. And then the Fed is concerned about whether the inflation will come back again or not. But clearly, even the house price in the US and the owner's equivalent rent, the data clearly showed that there is some declining trend. Therefore, I believe the interest rate cut will not take place in June or July and June, but in September, almost surely there is an interest rate cut as long as the current trend maintains.
Well, Professor Song, would you say the BOK will actually lower its interest rate as soon as the Fed does?
I think that is kind of inconsistent, and to be coherent of the monetary policy of Bank of Korea, the Chairman Lee of Bank of Korea, they have announced as a preemptive step, they have raised the interest rate in South Korea earlier than the Fed. then why not try this one in current situation? Because our economy is, as I told you earlier, clearly is worse than not only in terms of GDP growth rate, but also the prospect of the demographic change and the aging. Considering those situations, and also even I check the house price and recently from the KV data, then I have seen clearly declining, even in Seoul area on average. So therefore, that tells us that our domestic economy suffers so much from the kind of some stagnation. Therefore, I believe the Bank of Korea should take too much independence is not good right now, because considering our domestic economy growth rate and the employment, even though employment level remains very strong in South Korea, but it is the average wage and the share portion of labor cost is clearly declining. So considering these symptoms, we have to make some preemptive selection of the policy rate to be declined, because the same could take place in Canada, Bank of Canada, and they think of interest rate cut in June.
All right, Professor Song, thank you so much for your analysis. As always, you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very, very much.
The average wage of South Korean workers remains above 90% of the OECD average, but the wage gap between men and women is the largest among OECD member countries. According to an OECD report on Thursday, Korean workers on average earned $48,922 in 2022, which is 91.6% of the average of OECD member countries. That figure means that Korea ranks 19th out of 38 OECD countries. The country passed the 90% mark for the first time in 2020, when it stood at 90.4% of the OECD average. Meanwhile, the wage gap between men and women stood at 31.2% in 2022. That's the highest among OECD member countries. The AI Seoul Summit, co-hosted by South Korea and United Kingdom this year, wrapped up on Wednesday with an AI Seoul Summit ministerial session held behind closed doors. Our Ian Heat has the key takeaways.
Held in collaboration with the AI Seoul Summit, the AI Global Forum hosted by the South Korean government brought together top officials, leading industry experts, and academic representatives from various nations. In the first session at the Korea Institute of Science and Technology in Seoul on Wednesday, experts discussed the future direction of global AI governance. For instance, how can the side effects of the technology be managed? Experts say that society will need to adapt to more capable AI systems. Fraud and cyber attacks, for example, could become more commonplace.
What we'll need to do is we'll need to have things like spam filters, but on your phone. But I think these sort of adaptation interventions won't be enough.
There's a lot of work still to be done, not only for private corporations, but the public. And as Marcus Anderlung put it, governments will need to intervene more. Big companies that have the power to utilize customer data for commercial purposes talked about how they safeguard consumer privacy.
We are based on the usual agreement. So that means private blog data did not use for our training.
Internet conglomerate Naver added that it is willing to further establish guidelines in collaboration with the government. Session 2 focused on integrating AI into the public sector and spreading the benefits with the world. Communications giant KT demonstrated what it's working on as part of its social responsibilities.
First of all, we have developed Senior Well-being Service, which uses AI to monitor the health and safety of elderly citizens.
However, experts say when developing AI opportunities, the needs of the target region should be considered, as they may differ. Meanwhile, at the convention hall, the AI Seoul Summit ministerial session was held behind closed doors. This year's AI Seoul Summit, hosted by South Korea and the UK, conducted a private ministerial session, building upon the foundational discussions from Tuesday's Leaders Session and the first AI Safety Summit that was hosted last year by the UK. The session was co-chaired by Lee Jong-ho, South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT, and Michelle Donnellan, the United Kingdom's Secretary of State for Science of Innovation and Technology.
Key figures of the industry took part in in-depth discussions on AI innovation, safety, and sharing the benefits. Through this forum, it was reaffirmed that South Korea has the capability and leadership to set agendas on the international stage.
The minister added that South Korea will continue to collaborate with the global community to develop AI governance and safety. Yi-eun, Arirang News.
With this year being Visit Korea Year designated by the government, there's much to enjoy if you're interested in visiting the country. In fact, fans from around the world who have a huge heart for Korea are already having the time of their life here. Our cultural correspondent Song Yujin tells us more.
It's a dream come true for Zev Ted, a 76-year-old YouTuber and former programmer. Popular for his Korean drama reviews and songs by his favorite artist, IU, which led IU to invite him to a concert in July, Zev is currently visiting Korea. Though he's visited Korea before, this trip is particularly special.
I can't tell you how happy I am. I'm absolutely thrilled. You know, I got here at 4:30 in the morning this morning, but I'm too excited to lie around in a hotel room. Okay, they said, oh, take a rest and come for the luncheon. No, I'm not going to miss anything.
Zev is among the 49 invitees in the Korea Invites You program organized by the Culture Ministry and the Korea Tourism Organization. So among the more than 77,000 applicants from 185 countries and receiving recommendations from overseas branches of the Korea Tourism Organization, 49 people were chosen for the Korea Invites You program, a 5-day trip to Korea where they'll get to experience Korean culture firsthand.
We organized this program as part of the 2023 to 2024 Visit Korea Year. Our goal was to invite people from around the world who have a deep love and interest in Korea, as well as those with unique stories connected to our country. We want to show our appreciation for their ongoing support and share new and exciting aspects of Korean culture with them.
Take Chunny Chen, for example. She and her 9 high school friends are visiting Korea together again after 20 years. Taipei's Wesley Girls High School has been selecting Korea as its graduation trip destination since 2004, with Chen's class being the first.
I've been to Korea many times, as have my classmates. But this trip, coming back together, is even more special. Many places have changed a lot since we last visited, so we're experiencing a lot of the current Korean culture. We wore hanbok 20 years ago and will do so again tomorrow. We're really looking forward to it.
After a welcoming ceremony on Tuesday, the group headed to 1 Million Dance Studio, the largest of its kind in Korea. There, they learned K-pop dance moves from chief choreographer Choi Young-jun. It was an unforgettable moment for Alex, one of Malaysia's biggest social media influencers with over 6 million followers on TikTok. Known for his K-pop dance covers, he was even named one of the best dancers of the day.
I think K-pop has one of the best choreography and dance paired together. So I just started covering in my bedroom alone with my camera in front. So to be able to stand here and learn the choreography from the choreographer himself was really meaningful to me because he represents everything that I've been standing for and my whole content as a general. And I think it'll mean a lot to my followers as well.
The day wrapped up with chimek, chicken, and baekju, which means beer in Korean. Participants enjoyed the beloved Korean combination of crispy fried chicken, fresh draft beer, and the traditional rice wine makgeolli, toasting their future adventures in Korea.
I'm half Korean. My mother is Korean, my father is English, and my special story with Korea is that I have learned so much about my culture through promoting it online, and I want to share that love with my followers. I host events, I do supper clubs, I teach people about hanbok and the history of Korean food and culture, and in doing that, I've learned more myself about Korean culture.
The group will split into 5 subgroups, each exploring different themes like Korean culture, food, and wellness before heading home on Friday. 송유진, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. We begin today in the UK, where after months of speculation, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has announced a general election for July 4th. 44-year-old Sunak announced on Wednesday that he was calling the election earlier than expected, despite his Conservative Party lagging far behind the opposition Labour Party in public opinion polls. Sunak spoke outside 10 Downing Street in the pouring rain, saying that now is the moment for Britain to choose its future, while listing his achievements in government as a Prime Minister and a former Finance Minister. He said that the Conservatives will not put out hard-earned economic stability at risk. Labour leader Keir Starmer said the election is the moment the country's been waiting for, and that there is so much pride and potential to unlock in the UK. The United States Midwest region has been hit by multiple tornadoes. Search and rescue efforts are still ongoing in Iowa, where the city of Greenfield has reported several fatalities. Over the past 30 hours, tornadoes have been reported in Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma and Wisconsin, while major damage was seen in Iowa, with at least 18 tornadoes reported in the state. In Greenfield, Iowa police said at a news briefing on Tuesday evening that they have confirmed fatalities, but were unable to say exactly how many. Iowa State Patrol Sergeant Alex Dinkler said regarding the death toll that we're still counting at this time, while telling the reporters a good portion of Greenfield has been destroyed. Videos show devastation and severe damage to infrastructure as tornadoes flattened buildings and overturned cars. Greenfield saw at least an EF3 level tornado, which is a category for wind speeds of up to 265 kilometers per hour. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds declared a disaster emergency for 15 counties in the state, saying that it will provide its full resources to help the residents. Italy's Atalanta BC took the Europa League title home after beating Bayer Leverkusen 3-0 on Wednesday, ending the German champions' unbeaten streak. Atalanta's 26-year-old winger Ademola Lookman scored a stunning hat-trick in the 3-0 victory. The British-born Lookman is the first player to score a hat-trick in a Europa League final. The Europa League title is the second major trophy Atalanta have won in their 117-year history, and the first trophy of a 66-year-old head coach Gianpiero Gasperini's long career. It was the first loss of the season for Xabi Alonso's Bayer Leverkusen, dubbed Neverlosen, for their incredible 51-game unbeaten run. In the US, a new airline called Bark Air, aimed at providing a first-class experience for the dog, a business-class experience for people, will take its maiden flight from New York to Los Angeles on Thursday. CEO Matt Meeker said that he created the company to cater to dogs of all sizes to ensure comfort and a fear-free experience on an airplane. Meeker said that he had the idea for 10 years after he personally experienced difficulty transporting his Great Dane. Bark Air aims to sell 10 tickets per flight for 10 dogs to travel in luxury in a 15-person capacity aircraft. Dogs will be offered an onboard spa and luxurious menus such as barcachinos and doggy champagne. Tickets will cost $8,000 for a one-way international flight to London and $6,000 for domestic flights between LA and New York City.
Good morning. It looks to be another hot and sunny day for most places, and especially those in Gyeongsang-do provinces and nearby areas should notice much warmer highs, with temperatures easily surpassing 30 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Sunshine has been on full blast for the last couple of days, and today is no exception. The entire country will have strong sunshine, so sunproof items are a must today. Bright sunshine and high heat will spike ozone levels in most parts of the country. 충청남도 and 전라남도 will have higher levels. So please limit prolonged and heavy outdoor activities during the day and schedule them in the mornings and evenings when levels are lower. With that said, Gwangju gets up to 29 degrees. Daegu and Gyeongju will see a high of scorching 32 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Then early summer warmth continues through Saturday for many regions. The nationwide rain in the forecast on Sunday afternoon into early next Monday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for a Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니?
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.
먹어도 끝이 없는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 24시간 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Bring a new type of news show. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing you just for you. It's May 23rd here in Seoul. I'm Song Yoo-jin, and you're watching News Generation. Joining us today is Cheska Dainho.
Happy Thursday, everyone.
Happy Thursday. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Now, like always, we're going to start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending online over the past 24 hours. Experts suggest that climate change might have caused the severe turbulence encountered by the Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore, which resulted in one passenger's death and injuries to 71 others on Tuesday. Atmospheric scientists explained that the turbulence experienced by the flight was likely due to either clear air turbulence or thunderstorms. Now, clear air turbulence occurs when there is a change in wind direction around the jet stream, a fast-flowing river of air typically found at altitudes between 30,000 and 60,000 feet. Warmer air from increased greenhouse gas emissions is thought to alter wind speeds in the jet streams. Now, moving on back here in the country, new data shows that almost half of social media users in Korea are on Instagram, making it the most popular platform in the country. According to the Korea Information Society Development Institute on Wednesday, 48.6% of surveyed social media users reported using Instagram, up 17.1 percentage points from the previous year. The increase is attributed to the rise of short-form content. Now, breaking it down by demographic, Instagram is the most used platform among Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z, while Naver is the most popular among baby boomers. The report surveyed over 9,700 people, ranging from teenagers to those in their 60s. Now, finally, with the Korean government working hard to tackle the country's low birth rate, more local governments are organizing matchmaking events to help single men and women find potential partners. Cities like Jinju, Gumi, and Seongnam have hosted blind dating events, with some cities even receiving more than 1,000 applications. Now, these efforts are praised as unique welfare policies because they help people meet verified individuals and engage in activities that can naturally lead to romantic relationships. However, some actually argue that these initiatives miss the mark. They believe that to truly address the shrinking population issue, the focus should be on reducing the financial burdens of marriage and child rearing, such as providing more childcare options and supporting parents' career breaks. So, divided opinion on these government-led matchmaking events. So, here in the studio, what do you think about these events, these blind dates, Walter?
Well, I think, and I agree with a certain area of this, which is I think that they're scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to trying to increase the birth rate. I don't believe that this is the right solution. As a father myself, it wasn't that I had trouble finding someone. It was the thought of, you know, can I afford to raise a baby? So you know, I don't think there is a massive problem with people finding mates to have, you know, marriage and have a baby with. It's the financial burden that's a bigger part of the situation. So, but saying that, I don't see any harm in doing these events. I think they're very fun. You can meet people, and yes, there's a possibility of meeting the person you marry and maybe one day have a kid. But to rely on these as a increase in birth rate, not birth weight, I don't think this will help at all, in my opinion.
Right, economic factors are actually a big, factor when young parents decide on whether to have a child or not. We actually talked about this in our previous episode yesterday, but regarding this government-led blind test, there are actually some people who are reacting positively and actually agreeing on what kind of effect that this could have, right?
Yeah. So when I first read the newsfeed that you sent me, I thought this is actually super interesting.
Yeah, me too.
So as always, I'm going to play the devil's advocate to Walter and actually say I actually think it could work.
Really?
But not sure about the actual birth rate itself, which I will get into. But from what I hear from my friends who work in one company, it can be extremely difficult to actually meet people.
I agree. Home office.
See, right here. So it's very difficult to diversify your relationships or interactions with people. So when there is a verified, like city council run meet and greet or speed dating, people might actually find it more comfortable or more secure enough to go out and actually meet people. Because nowadays, some of my friends in Korea, they use dating apps and sometimes they get caught in a very...
Sometimes they're dangerous.
It is dangerous, you know, it's unverified and you don't know who you're actually going to meet. As for the birth rate itself, as we discussed extensively here on News Generation, I think the issue goes far deeper than just whether you have a partner or not. Financial, social, economic, and also very cultural. So I do think it is very amusing, and I kind of want to see how it pans out.
Right. So a very interesting event that we shed light on today, and that was our news feed for this Thursday. So shifting gears, we're going to move on to our main discussion of the day. We had several national holidays in May, so I think some of our viewers living in Korea would have enjoyed a short vacation. Now, in recent years, we've noticed a new travel trend in Korea. Instead of brief trips that last only for a few days or a week, some are opting to live in a new environment for a month or even longer. Let's take a look at the screen.
Have you ever thought about living at your travel destination for a while rather than just staying there briefly as a traveler? If so, you're not alone. More people in Korea are embracing this travel trend called living 1 month. According to one domestic travel platform, the number of users booking stays for 1 week or 1 month during the first quarter of this year surged by 154% compared to the same period last year. Is this also a trend among our generation? And if so, why?
Right, so this new long-term travel trend we're seeing in Korea is often called 한 달 살기, which translates to 1 month living. Now, Chesko, the idea of traveling for a long period of time is not new. We've seen people traveling for months or some even for years. So how is this 1 month living different from the long-term traveling that we're used to?
Yeah, as you quite accurately mentioned, this is something very interesting that has been trending in our generation. So it is literally living in a foreign city, and by foreign, I mean somewhere you have never been before. So it could even be within your own country for a month, much like the local resident. So it's different in that you're not just visiting and then touring and then exiting the city or the country. And during this 1 month of your stay, by the way, which can be longer than 1 month.
It doesn't have to be like 30 days.
Exactly, not like exactly 30 days and you get out. It could be 28, 2 weeks.
Right.
But this long-term stay of living like the local resident hasn't been around as much. And prior to this trend among MZs, the 1 month living was actually only made possible as a retirement plan. When you actually had the financial capability.
Right, when you have the time, money.
Exactly, time, money, right? Or, you know, some people who just could afford to travel. So this is a really recent trend, and this type of quote-unquote living condition or living style has become extremely popular among MZers.
So you mentioned how this has become popular among MZers. So how much has our generation actually hopped onto this trend?
Yeah, I was also curious too. So let's take a look at the screen to see some figures that actually support this trend. So according to Statistics Korea, which surveyed, the Jeju Island is a very popular spot for this 1 month long stay, with annually about 35,000 people staying in the island. And of those, almost 40%, that's a huge number, right? 40% of those are actually younger than 40 years old. And I think it, had also to do with receiving some boost from COVID-19.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember, but I think everyone was sort of dying to just like get out.
Yeah, travel, look around.
I'm sure people were thinking, if I could just go somewhere, I would like to live here for a long time. But another thing is also with COVID-19, I think it provided room for people to become digital nomads and like often remote locations. So they started like looking for these funding programs that the city sort of, provides to raise awareness and boost their city economy, or just, pick up their camera and then start blogging.
Right. So there's a particular reason why we actually chose to discuss this topic today, because this idea of 1 month living has become extremely popular nowadays. So Walter, I want to ask you, why didn't we see this travel or living trend during our parents' generation?
Well, I think the reason why it's become popular nowadays rather than our parents' generation is because there's a few different reasons. I mean, though in our parents' generation as well, we lived in a fast-moving society, especially here in Seoul. We are very tired of that fast-moving society, so we need to get away, we need to refresh. And we see this as like a mini holiday to get away from all the hustle and bustle of Seoul or wherever you may live. Doesn't matter which city you live in, as long as it's away from here. That's the reason why I think many people love to do these 1 month stays or 2 month stays or whatever it may be. But here's the thing, it doesn't mean that they stop working exactly. Some of these people do continue to work either in a part-time job at maybe like a convenience store or a cafe.
Picking fruits at farms.
Picking fruits at farms as well, which is great, especially if you go to Jeju though. So to answer your question why we don't see it in our parents' generation so much, previously it was just not commonplace. When a long time ago here was the form, graduate, find someone, get married, and then continue just living the way it is. Now, there wasn't a lot of time to spare, and if you were to, and there's still a small stigma now, if you were to take more than 2 weeks off, or 3 weeks off, or 4 weeks off, you were kind of seen as like you're not committed to your job, you're a bit lazy. But perceptions are changing, and that's why we're seeing this trend move forward.
And to talk more specifically why our generation, millennials and Gen Zs, as Cheska mentioned in the stat, that 40% of those who tried 1 month living in Jeju Island were part of our generation. Why do you think 1 month living has become especially popular among our generation? Could you elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to the background of how it all started, including the COVID-19, I also think social media actually played a pretty big part too. Because now that many of our generation can actually work remotely, a lot of people use these 1 month stays to create social media content and to share the different lifestyle that they enjoy. I think some are even doing it overseas, especially after COVID. I think a lot of people had that craving, so they consume these contents more. So there's a supply and demand on both sides as well.
Right, especially because our generation is often called the most tech-savvy generation. I think that like filming those vlogs and actually uploading them would be like a major reason why they're more into these type of traveling. And talking about from a more broader point of view, Walter, I even heard that millennials and Gen Zs from overseas are actually visiting Korea to try out these traveling methods or trends.
Yeah, I guess we can really contribute this to Hallyu, like the Korean wave as well, because there are a lot of K-drama fans who want to stay here in Korea and stay particularly in the areas of where some of their favorite K-dramas were shot at. And now, not only that, the local government is also hopping on this bandwagon and doing their best to try to attract those foreigners through the city, through various types of promotions or subsidies. It's a great way to attract tourism. I think, the more we see these foreigners come to Korea, it's also not just Seoul, it's other places that they can go to. So I think this is really great for Korea.
I think that especially these regions, for example, near oceans or what we sometimes call the countryside is receiving more of these visitors is actually a very good thing, because these areas often struggle with low population and also they're not as much as promoted to popular tourist destinations. So this could definitely give these regions a boost. And I found this very interesting. I don't know whether you guys find it interesting too, but our generation is really known for prioritizing prioritizing and valuing efficiency.
Absolutely.
But actually, 1 month living costs more and it requires more time when compared to short-term traveling. So why do you think that we're so dedicated to spending our money and time to experience 1 month living?
Yeah, that's also very interesting because that is definitely our trend. We like to be very efficient. But I think another thing is when it comes to, you kind of briefly mentioned it, but a lot of city councils are also sponsoring these kind of events. And my friend, she actually did a couple of weeks in Gyeongju, and then she did another couple of weeks in Tongyang because she received subsidy from these city councils. But aside from that, I have friends who come to Korea from like France, Denmark, and Netherlands to just live here for a few months, clearly knowing that the expense is greater than just, you know, hopping in and hopping out because you have to find the house, make sure that you get around, right? So let's take a look at the screen to see what the responses were from these people. Now, other than just general curiosity about a new culture, what I found really interesting was inspiration and motivation. So people actually wanted to be inspired by challenging themselves or even exposing themselves to these foreign, new and interesting places. And usually by living in a completely different culture, you find the challenges I get exciting.
Yeah, they're mind-opening too.
Right, yeah. And then recharge, also a big one. When you live in a city like Seoul or New York, you really want to get away and enjoy the beautiful urban, suburban, you know, kind of aesthetic, I suppose. And some young parents even go abroad for their children to do language exchange as well. So.
Right. So we talked about why 1 month living or this traveling trend has become big among millennials and Gen Zs and here in Korea. So we asked a very interesting question to our viewers, where in Korea they would choose to live for a month if they were given the opportunity. And here's what 3 of them had to say. So if we look at the comments, Toby says Jeju City, which Jeju City, part of Jeju Island. I traveled extensively around Korea during the 7 years I lived there, but never to Jeju. I would love to spend a month there and maybe learn some Jeju local dialect. Leon says, I would like to live in Busan since I've never traveled there. I'd visit the famous tourist destinations, try out the regional delicacies, and perhaps find some hidden gems. I would want to fully immerse myself and explore how residents spend their daily lives there. Kabi says, I would want to live in a more rural area or near a village and reside in a hanok, preferably up in a hill or a mountain. I want to wear hanbok, eat Korean food every day, and experience farming and making kimchi. So a lot of interesting comments from our viewers. Now, to find more about the reasons behind our generation's enthusiasm for 1 month living, as we've seen from our discussion and from the comments, we're going to invite an expert to join our discussion. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. We're back. So today we're joined by Bae So-young, who is a professor of hotel tourism and tourism management at Kyunghee University in Seoul. Welcome, Professor Bae, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Lovely to have you. So our first question for you is, Professor Bae, do you believe there is a specific reason why 1 month living has become a trend among millennials and Gen Zs?
Yes, this MZ generation is actually a me generation. So their focus is heavily centered on themselves. So they highly value personal experience, personal growth, pursuing well-being, and a balanced life. And they really want to enjoy this moment and now. So for their happiness, instead of saving time, money, and their resources for future, because it's just full of uncertainty. So the idea of spending a whole month in a totally new environment and immersing themselves in a particular local culture and gaining very diverse and deep experiences and engaging in self-reflection, it's very, very appealing and rewarding for them. And also in a society like South Korea, where extreme competition is prevalent from a very, very young age, such a break has felt like a luxury before, but things has changed it. So very similar to the Western concept of gap year. So this year, these days, like young Korean people are increasingly pausing intentionally their academic pursuit and professional pursuit to invest some time for a break and also for some personal realignment.
I would love your analogy about the gap year. I guess 1 month stay can be seen as like a life gap month or gap year for the MCers. Is there also some difference in what our generation values compared to the older generation when traveling? You mentioned some of the traits, but could you compare it with the older generation also?
Yes. So in South Korea, now like everybody travels, but the unrestricted overseas travel was only permitted about like 35 years ago. So the former generations, in fact, they had limited travel experiences compared to these days. And they used to be engaged in rather like conventional form of travel, like a large group tour. So visiting well-known landmarks and taking photo shots and sightseeing. But in the meantime, the national economy was much worse than it is now. So leisure was back then not actually valued at all. But like this generation, MZ has grown up in a more economically stable society where the quality of life is a priority for them. And they are actually experienced travelers. So they have enough experiences. So beyond traditional sightseeing, they seek for more deeper connections with local culture and gain more profound understanding of themselves during their local travel. And another thing to add is their sharing behavior. So when they think of travel, they want something shareable. And such content is a major travel information sources among this generation, as well as a major trigger for their travel decisions too.
Thank you for your answers. We're just about to run out of time, but quickly, what kind of travel trends do you expect to see among millennials and Gen Zers?
Well, I think they will be still like experience seekers. So this generation seems to continue their quest for unique and authentic experiences, not only embracing like long-term independent travel, such as like 1 month stay, but also willing to invest their money in their like hobby-based travel, interest-based travel. So if they are big fans of such concerts or rare experiences, they will be willing to spend some money. And also, the travel trend of this generation are expected to evolve very, very closely with social media. So while this generation pursues like very, very unique experiences, but in the meantime, this generation also seeks experiences that have been tried, tested, and endorsed by their peers, as evidenced by numerous validation photos like 인증샷 and hashtags. So like engaging in these activities like fosters a sense of belonging and connection. And the act of this sharing self becomes a form of leisure and entertainment among this generation. So this trend is likely to persist as they place a high value on like being part of the in crowd and also experience enjoyment from this like social interaction and engagement.
Great. All right, Professor Bae, thank you for your amazing insights today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we often like to end our episode with some tips and advice from our panelists here in the studio. So briefly, are there anything, tips or advice that you'd like to give for those who want to try out 1 month living?
Yeah, I will very quickly use my very own experience. I did a 3-month stay in Costa Rica to volunteer during college. And as Professor mentioned, I think if it's something unique and self-development, it can also help. So it's really awesome to just go in there and see what comes at you. But having like maybe a simple purpose, whether it be like a meditation retreat or volunteering or like working at a farm, I think having that will help you get settled in a foreign country rather quickly.
Right, so that you can get the most out of it.
Exactly, yeah.
What are your advice, Walter?
Well, just quickly, out of Seoul. Get out of Seoul, do something else. Go to Jeju, go to Busan, go to Gwangju, go anywhere else but Seoul. Seoul's great, but Korea's got more to offer than just Seoul.
That's true. Right. So hope everyone who sees this episode can have a chance to step out of their comfort zone and enjoy a new type of traveling, for example, 1 month living. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Deinhaus.
It's always fine, thank you.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you guys. Thank you everyone for watching. See you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.